Hi everyone, it's your girl Tamari, the Astro Fashionista. Welcome to my channel. If you want to hear more about astrology, numerology, Reiki, fashion, beauty, interior design, subscribe to my channel. Go ahead and hit that bell icon below. Today I'm going to be talking about Saturn returns. This was a request I had on Instagram from Shelly. Hi Shelly. And she wanted to know about what happens when you're in your Saturn return. And I thought this was an excellent video because my Saturn return was actually pretty brutal, or so I thought. But I kind of just wanted to give you guys some information about what the Saturn return is, what to expect, and what it's all about. So first, let's talk about Saturn in general. So Saturn in astrology is the planet of hard lessons, structure, building a foundation. And if you guys know anything about mythology, Saturn was the Roman god of agriculture. And Saturn it's one of those planets that probably gets the hardest rap in astrology. I think if you know anything about astrology, you probably hear about Venus and Mars and Jupiter, and there's what's called malefic planets and benefic planets. Benefic planets are Jupiter and Venus because they're more of like the lighthearted planets. They are more about like bringing pleasure and fun and brightening things up, whereas the malefics, which are to our Saturn and Mars, are really the places where there can be challenges in your natal chart. And for some of you that don't know, I'll repeat this probably on every video because I don't know where you guys are in your astrology knowledge, but your natal chart is a snapshot of how the universe looked the moment that you were born. And this can tell you all about your personality, some of your challenges, some of your strengths, some things that might happen in your life. And someone like me, an astrologer, can help interpret the natal chart and kind of give you guidance in your life. So back to Saturn. Saturn is, well, if you guys remember anything about astronomy or anything that you learned in class, we have the sun, right? Sun is the center of the solar system. And then you have Mercury being the closest planet. Then Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and then there's Saturn. Did I mix up Earth and Venus? Venus is closer. Yeah, Venus is hotter. So anyway, sorry. Sometimes I mix it up because Earth is not like when you're doing a chart, you're not like you're doing it from the perspective of Earth. So I know obviously the sequences of the planets, and I never think about Earth. But so Saturn is after Jupiter, and that's significant because Jupiter, obviously we all know that it's the largest planet in the solar system. It's huge. It has its own moons. Saturn, following a planet like Jupiter, is very indicative of what the energy of this planet means. So Jupiter being big and expansive and let's have fun, let's do everything to the max, let's just exponential, everything's extra. Jupiter is just extra, let's just say that. Saturn couldn't be more different than Jupiter. Saturn wants to restrict everything. It wants you to get everything in order. It wants to make things harder for you. It wants to toughen you up. It wants to whip you into shape. That's just what it wants to do. So anywhere that Saturn is in your natal chart shows where you have that energy. It shows where you're restricted. It shows where you're going to have to learn your lessons. It shows where things might be harder and might not come easy for you. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a challenge, and it's something you'll live with. So not only do you have Saturn, everyone has Saturn somewhere in their chart, but Saturn is always moving like all the other planets. So me as an astrologer, when I'm looking at, when people are coming to me and they want to say, well, how's my year going to be next year? I'm looking at transits. That's one part of my job, is to look, okay, how are the planets interacting with the planets in your natal chart? So one of the first things I look at is Saturn, because Saturn is a huge indicator of how your year is going to be. So Saturn changes signs every 2.5 years. It's a pretty slow moving planet when you compare it to like a planet like Mercury, that every three weeks it's changing signs, or the moon's changing every 2.5 days, or, you know, Venus. Like, those are all pretty fast moving planets. But Saturn it's in one sign for 2.5 years. And that's significant because it's wherever it is in your chart, it's staying there, and it's staying there until you learn the lesson. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. So I think that's why a lot of people kind of dread. It's like, oh, where's Saturn? Well, I know I do. I'm like, where's Saturn going now? And obviously I know every year or every 2.5 years where it's going to move into my chart. So the Saturn return, I just want to make sure I gave enough background on Saturn. We talked about it taking 2.5 years to move signs. Oh, okay. Saturn's rulership. Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius traditionally. So every zodiac, well, there's a few zodiac signs that had traditional rulers. And once the new planets were discovered, they got assigned. So Uranus was found, and that became the ruler of Aquarius. But before Uranus was the ruler of Aquarius, Saturn was the traditional ruler. And I think I talked about this in another video of mine, but I'm kind of leaning more towards using traditional rulers, because there was a reason the ancients assigned these things, and it makes a lot of logical sense. I won't get into it. But I do kind of still look at both. So for me, Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius in very different ways. So if you know anything about Capricorn, you can watch all my about Capricorn video and all about Aquarius video. Capricorn is it's a traditional sign for the most part. It's all about structure. A lot of Capricorns, it takes them longer in life to achieve things, because Saturn is really making sure they get it right. But once they do, they kind of jolt and move ahead of people. And it's almost like their later years in life are more enjoyable than their younger years. Anyone that has like a very big Saturn influence in their chart, that's kind of the case. So you can kind of see Saturn's influence in Capricorn, because they're kind of known for being kind of melancholy. They have kind of like a dry sense of humor. They're usually very like serious when it comes to like things that they believe in. They're not like a jokester type sign, whereas like a Sagittarius or Leo might be more playful. Capricorns are they're more on the serious side of life. Aquarius has a Saturn influence in a different way, because Aquarius is very forward thinking. It's humanitarian, but I find the Saturn influence is it's more reflective of their cold demeanor. I don't know, I guess it's the only way for me to describe it, because Capricorn has a coldness about it. Aquarius does too. And to me, that's very much the Saturn influence. It's like this detached, let me step back and analyze things from a rational position. That's very Saturnian. So those two signs are under Saturn influence. So when it comes to the Saturn return, this is something that happens between ages 27 and like 30. And it's called a Saturn return. It's because Saturn is returning to the original spot that it was in at the moment you were born. And that's significant because it's Saturn conjuncting what's called a conjunction in astrology. When two planets are sitting next to each other, Saturn is conjuncting Saturn, or it's near Saturn, and it's kind of activating a part of your chart. It's almost like, the best way to describe it is it's like a changing of the guards, or not changing of guards, a rites of passage. You're moving from one phase of your life into the next. And we all know that your 20s are totally different than your 30s. It's almost like your 20s, and I can speak for myself, it's like you feel like you have all the time in the world. You have all these dreams and visions of how your life is going to be, and you know, you're planning, you're like, oh, and 30 kind of seems far away, even when you're probably like 27, 28. But then when you start to really get 27, 28, 29, you're like, oh shit, like I'm about to be 30. And then the clock starts ticking. That's Saturn rules time. And so you get this sense of like, what have I done up until this point? What's the next phase of my life going to be like? And the reason why Saturn returns are hard is because Saturn either rewards, or I hate to say punish, or kind of, it's not really punish it, because it wants to get you into shape, but let's just say punish for the lack of a better word. So if you've been handling all your shit, you've been responsible, you've been doing everything in your 20s, your early 20s to the late 20s, you've been doing everything to get on the track of, like, maybe you have a life purpose, maybe you love your job, maybe you have a relationship that's really strong. If you've been doing everything that's good for you up into your late 20s, Saturn's going to reward you in some way. It's going to pay off. If you have not, if there's something weak, and I hate to say weak, but if there's something that's not, it could be improved. It's not strong. It's not stable. It's not right for you. Saturn will break that down. And that's important because I think a lot of people probably have a certain trajectory for their life. They think, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then Saturn will be like, you're not doing that, because that's not what you're supposed to be doing. It'll knock you kind of off your feet, and it kind of makes you feel like you've lost control, and it's a little scary. Okay, so what's significant about the Saturn return is not only that Saturn is coming back to the same spot, it's where is it? Where is it natally in your chart? Where does Saturn live? Where is he at home? Because that's the area that really is going to be the main focus during your Saturn return. Where is Saturn making aspects in your chart? What other planets is it talking to in your chart? That all of those planets are going to be affected. All those houses are going to be activated in your chart. And every house in your astrology chart, there's 12 houses, rules a certain part of your life. So because I have myself as an example, I will tell you about my Saturn return. So I natally have Saturn, what's called conjunct my ascendant. So Saturn is sitting right on my rising sign, or my ascendant. And the ascendant in your natal chart is, it's a very important angle because it's your personality. It's you. I'm a Scorpio rising. I'm a Taurus, but I have a Scorpio rising. I have Pluto in Scorpio. I have Mars in Scorpio. I have Saturn in Scorpio, and I'm a Scorpio rising. So I have a lot of Scorpio influence in my chart. So when Saturn was transiting my chart, I have Saturn conjunct my ascendant. That alone, I could have anticipated this 3 years before it happened. Something was going to happen involving my personality. Something was going to happen involving me, my physical being. It could have been, and this will manifest different for different people. I won't get into my whole natal chart, but I have a pretty strong, I want to say, health. My son's in my 6th, and I know a lot of people say that that's like, could be bad for health, but I actually feel like I have some good planetary placements where health is pretty good for me. So I didn't really anticipate something happening to me like on a physical level. It was actually more mental. It was like a mental transformation, a transformative time for me. Another reason why this was significant is because I have Pluto in my 12th house at 0 degrees, and it's an important degree in astrology. I won't get into that either. So when Saturn passed over Pluto, it was like everything that I knew about life broke down, and it was really involving a relationship. And the reason why it was such a big thing for me is because the way I was viewing myself in relationships. So that was the most significant thing that happened regarding my Saturn return. I had a relationship that I was in for 7 years. I moved out. I was kind of putting the pressure, like, okay, what's our next steps? And when that didn't work out, it was Saturn's way of saying this relationship is not supposed to be. Whereas I thought, like, well, if I kind of move out, we kind of have our space, we'll come back together. Saturn cut it off cold turkey. And one thing that I found in my soul searching over those 2.5 years, it was hard. I'm telling you, it was mentally, it was very, very tough. And I think from the outside looking in, maybe people didn't know how hard of a time that was for me, but I was crying all the time. I was very down. I was like in a depression. I didn't know where I was headed. I didn't know, I didn't have faith in relationships. I didn't have faith in men, just because my partner was so great and I thought we were perfect for each other, and it didn't make sense to me why it wasn't working out. It was just a really sad time for me. But then, and I'll get to the flip side of it, because there was good things that happened, obviously, but emotionally, it was very hard for me. And I will have to add that I do already have stressful aspects in my chart that Saturn triggered. So it's not going to be this way for everyone. I have Saturn square my moon, which is already a very difficult aspect in astrology. I have a T-square between my sun, Pluto, and my moon. Saturn passed over that. It was like hitting every difficult angle in my chart. Saturn was like, I'm gonna hit you there. I'm gonna hit you there. I'm gonna hit you there. And I was like, oh, fuck, like, when is this gonna be over? So, it was really involving the relationship and how I see myself, because really I was giving my power away. I was waiting for someone to step up who was not ready to step up, and I was beating myself up over it. And one of the biggest lessons Saturn taught me was to stand on my own 2 feet. And it was almost like something, excuse me, before I got in that relationship, I've always had a pretty strong sense of self. And this person is amazing. I'm not going to bash him. It wasn't anything like that, but it was something, it's in our synastry, in our composite, and our synastry charts, this type of conflict that we have, to where I would feel less than. So Saturn really had me address those issues during my Saturn return. It was a lot of soul searching. It was a lot of crying. It was a lot of healing. I did Reiki. I turned to my spirituality more. My astrology got better because I was really, I was in it. And I had always been in it, but I was in it. Like, I was reading a lot. It was just a really transformative time. So, that was the bad thing about my Saturn return. Not bad, but the difficult part. The positive part was my career took off. I had been, up until then, I had done like all these amazing internships, and I really had a good foundation as far as like work experience, but I was kind of lost. Like, I was kind of jumping like from job to job. And during that time, I started a job that really was a foundation for the career that I'm in now outside of astrology. And it almost like it focused me, and I started to excel, and I was really doing well in my career. I started making more money year after year. I was getting raises, or I stayed at the job for about 2 years, and I got a huge jump, and then I stayed there and I got another huge jump. Like, it really was good for me financially and career wise, because I was someone who has always worked. Like, I've been working since I was 15. I've never not had a job. Like, even in college, I've never been unemployed. I've never known what it's like to not work and not have money coming in. So I think because Saturn knew that I was, and I have Saturn natally in my first chart, like, that is someone who's performing like a Capricorn. It's right on my ascendant. That's always with me. I'm a very responsible person. Saturn rewarded me for all of the hard work that I had been doing for years and years and years. So it's, it was two different sides of the coin. It was difficult emotionally, but in one area, it was one of the greatest things. After my Saturn return was over, I swear, it feels like the minute Saturn moved out, like I was counting down to the day. I was like, ooh, I can't wait till Saturn moves out of my first house. It seems like almost overnight, like all the stress that I had been under lifted off of my shoulders. It was that dramatic. But I wasn't off the hook, because once Saturn left my first house, where does it go? It goes into your second house of income and finances. So even though I was like strong, I felt like a new person once Saturn, after my Saturn return was over. I felt like, and I forgot to mention that I was struggling with anxiety a lot of my 20s, like very, very, very much anxiety, very anxious. A lot of people didn't know, but my boyfriend at the time knew. It was like, it was bad. And I want to say it didn't end, during my Saturn return. Like, I still had to deal with it, but I felt like I had a better more control over it. And even still to this day, like I never not have anxiety, but it's more under control than ever, because like I've grown and I'm more confident, and I really believe in myself. I believe in what I'm doing. So that's another thing, is that it just made me like I really felt immovable after I went through that Saturn return. But yeah, Saturn moved into my second house after that. I want to make a note that you will have probably mostly 2 Saturn returns in your life, unless you live to be like late 80s. The second one is actually like around age 60, like maybe age 58 to 60, where you'll be challenged again. That's when Saturn, because it takes 29.5 years to do a full circle. And then again, another 29.5 years after that, if you live that long, you'll have another Saturn return. You probably won't give an F by then, because you'll be like, child, God take me, I'm ready to go. But yeah, so that's about the Saturn return. If you want to know where Saturn is natally in your chart, you can go to my website, go to astrofashionista.com, click on your zodiac, and then scroll down. Don't click on one of the zodiac signs unless you want to read about your sign. But scroll down a little bit, go to the natal chart calculator, enter your information, and there will be a free chart free chart generator that pops up, and you can see where Saturn is in your chart. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning about Saturn and your Saturn return today. If you have any other questions, please leave a comment below. I'll try to answer it. If there's any other videos that you want me to do, or any other topics you want me to tackle, leave it in the comments. I just want to leave you guys with this. Don't fear Saturn. It wants to make you better, stronger, and the best. We all go through things in life, but we get through them. And Saturn is there just to make you get in tip-top shape. So don't fear him. All right, I'll see you guys later in the next video. Bye.